So, story time. I'm a car guy. You know, I've been interested in cars and transport since I was a kid. And yeah, I used to draw cars when I was little. I had Matchbox toys. I watched Top Gear back when it was before the original team, got poached by Channel 5. I knew all the makes, models. I've collected car brochures. I love cars. They're great. Cars are cool, aren't they? Check these out. They're fascinating. I love the engineering of them. I love all the history of it, all the names, makes, models. This car, this is a Bentley. I mean, this is a status symbol right here. I'm a car guy. When I was a student, one of the stupidest things I did was went out and bought a car, thinking I can restore this. It's a classic, 20-year-old banger, and it lasted a year and had to be sold for parts because it was falling apart. But so I like cars individually, but there's a but, because cars are just terrible as a form of transport. They're inefficient, they pollute, they take up space, they create traffic jams. They're a bit rubbish. So I kind of have a love-hate relationship with cars. Society, we've kind of become addicted to cars, really. And it's easy to see why. They're convenient, they're fast. You can drive, from right outside your house to right where you're going, mostly, and take all your stuff with you. And you're not, you don't have to wait for a timetable. You can just go when you want. It's great, it's convenient. But when a whole lot of people want to drive in the same direction at the same time, that's when you end up with big traffic jams. You need to provide parking for all these cars, which takes up more space, which could be used for other things. So it's a really inefficient way of moving people from A to B. And then there's the air pollution aspect, plus all the resources they consume. They're just an environmental disaster. Not to mention, of course, they're dangerous. Cars kill, I think, something over 1,500 people a year just in the UK. The numbers for other modes of transport pale in comparison to the number of deaths caused by cars. So what can we do about it? Well, the answer is trains, and bikes, and trams, and buses. And before anyone comes at me in the comments, yes, I know there are some journeys that you really do need a car for. If I take all my reenactment kit to Wales or Fort George or wherever, there's no way of getting it there without a car. But for most journeys, like commuting, visiting, relatives, going on holiday, whatever, you don't need a car. And we need to build cities around not cars. By default, we need to give people the option of taking a tram or a subway or walking or cycling. And you get, we have this concept of what's called the 15-minute city, which basically means you should be able to walk from your house to amenities, shops, places of work, whatever, in 15 minutes without using a car. And there are lots of sort of conspiracy theorist types who conflate this with low emission zones with, they're taking away our freedom to drive a car, I guess. But hang on, to drive a car you need a license, you need insurance, and you have to pay a large sum of money to actually buy the car. So walking and cycling are, walking's free, anyone can walk. Cycling, thanks a few £100, for a cheap one. A little more if you want to go at market, but I mean, it's a lot cheaper than a car. And then, of course, if you take the car, you can't drink. If you want to have a little tipple, you're gonna have, you're gonna go buy not the car. So, actually, using non-car modes of transport can be freeing in some respects. You don't need to park your car anywhere. I can get off the subway or walk. I don't need to worry about parking. I'm there. I'm at my destination. But of course, you then have the problem that it takes longer by public transport usually, because it has to stop everywhere to pick everyone up. Timetables, especially on a Sunday, which is a Sunday today, I had to wait like an hour for my train in Bells Hill, just because the frequency is so low on a Sunday. So yeah, public transport has problems. One of them being it's slow and it's expensive. Trains need to be a lot cheaper. I think everyone agrees trains need to be a lot cheaper. If we're going to encourage people to leave the cars at home, the cost of public transport has to come down, and that's a matter for government. We need to get, local councils on board and say, hey, subsidise transport, make it cheaper, people will maybe use it more. So let's go around and look at some other options that you can take besides the car that are better for the environment. Well, first of all, walking, cycling. If we have settlements that built, and most places in Britain and in Europe generally are older towns built in medieval times before cars existed, so you can, if you live reasonably close to the town centre, feasibly walk everywhere. I did it. I lived in Ayr for when I worked at sea, and I didn't own a car. I was at sea for half the year anyway, so a car was just a depreciating asset that was sitting there with its battery going flat when I was away on a boat. So I sold the car, and I lived for years without a car. I was in Ayr town centre. I could walk to the shops. I could walk wherever I needed to be, or if I needed to go further afield, get the bus, get the train. It should be possible to live like that. You should be able to walk or cycle, take the metro, subway, tram, whatever, bus to work. And you shouldn't need a car to live unless you're maybe out in the country. Yeah, there are some places that buses are very infrequent. It would be impractical. We're not going to go back to the days, pre-beaching days, when every little village had its own railway station. It's just not cost effective, it's not practical. But buses exist. We can make buses cheaper, more frequent. But most folks live in towns and cities. So how do we get those people to leave the car at home? You need to have bike lanes that are safe, and this is one of the reasons why I've been on Pedal on Parliament and Pedal on COP26. People should be able to cycle everywhere and not worry about cars, and that means more cycle infrastructure, bike lanes, what have you. Trams, light rail, subways, buses, especially in larger towns. Cities like Glasgow, we've got an excellent subway and heavy rail system in Glasgow. Edinburgh's got trams. Newcastle, I was in last week, has a fantastic metro that is expanding. And then for trips further afield, you have heavy rail. And the rail network is expanding all the time, and that's excellent news. It's good for the environment. Trains are just so much more efficient at carrying people than cars are. Especially electric trains, and especially when that electricity comes from a zero carbon source. I love trams. Trams are cool. It's an electric train, but it's convenient, it runs along the street, it gets where you need to be. But it's got all the advantages of an electric train, being that it's powered by green energy, it doesn't have as much rolling adhesion as a bus, so it's much more efficient. But of course that comes with problems, is if it's running on the street, it's mixing with traffic. And this was the problem in the 60s when cities like Glasgow started to get rid of their trams, was they were being held up by cars, ironically. In narrow city streets like this, cars are a nuisance. Look, there's one there parked on the tram tracks. So of course it holds up all the traffic. and just generally gets in the way. So, a great solution to car traffic is we put the electric trains underground. Subways are brilliant. This is one of the second generation subway cars from Glasgow. Our subway's cool. They take up zero space because they're underground. They carry people, they're electric. They carry a lot of people very quickly. They avoid traffic. But of course, tunnelling is expensive, so they are, well, they're a great solution. They are very expensive to build. And if we look at the Elizabeth line down in London, that's involved a lot of tunnelling. Of course, that went over budget. It's a trolley bus. It's an electric bus. It doesn't use batteries. It takes electricity from overhead wires. And it's kind of a compromise between trams and buses. It's got, you know, it doesn't have quite as much infrastructure cost as a tram. It's slightly more flexible than a tram. Well, why aren't we using more of these? Honestly, they're brilliant. Instead of using battery buses, which are heavier and use rare earth metals. I think it's ironic that the Transport Museum itself is an example of, you know, designing things around cars rather than around public transport, because it's a fairly long walk to get here from Partick Station. You've got to cross that massive road to get here. And then you've got this giant car park. This is the car park for the Riverside Museum, right? And it's barely full. Then there's two buses. All those cars, the people that came in these cars could probably fit on one bus quite easily. And you just think, if it, you know, the old museum that was in Kelvin Bridge was in the middle of the town. It was a shortish, it's still a fair old walk from the subway station. And the car parking was very limited, but it was quite easy to get to walking or by public transport. This, you're out here on the river. It's a beautiful, beautiful location, but you kind of get the impression that it's designed for cars. This right here is what's known in design terms as a desire path, because whoever designed this footpath thought, I know, we're going to make people walk all the way up here to get to here, and people were like, nah, I'm just gonna walk in a straight line. That's actually easier than the footpath that's been provided. Look at all the space the cars are taking up here. You've got a dual carriageway, which is the expressway, the other side of that fence, and then we've got a 4-lane road here. Why do we need to give all this space over to cars? Electric cars like this Tesla are more fuel efficient, but here's the thing, and most environmentalists will tell you, they're basically just a sticking plaster. They're not a solution because they are still cars. They're more energy efficient cars, but they still have the same problems of land use, resource use. It's volumes about how inefficient cars are, that all the cars in this museum are stacked up on a wall to save space, because if they were parked up in rows, it would take up half the museum. Great example of how we can do transport better. We've got a railway station, there's also a subway station that's got a big bike rack outside, so you can cycle to the railway station, catch your train into town, come back, and then get your bike home again. Hey, guess what? Bike lanes also work for mobility scooters as well. Look at that. And less traffic would mean that emergency services would be able to get through faster. So what am I doing, and what can you do to sort of help end car dependency? Well, join the campaigning group, I think, is the first thing. Sign on a member of Railfuture. Like I say, I've been on Pedal on Parliament. But also make a conscious effort, and I've done this myself, make a conscious effort to leave the car at home. If you're going out, going into the city, take the train, take the bus, leave the car behind. You know, it's good for the environment, and you know, it's good for your health as well, because walking and cycling, you're not sat down on the car, you're actually doing, there's someone going by on a skateboard out there. You know, walking and cycling improves your health. It's exercise. So get out there, go for a walk to the shops instead of taking the car. You're improving your own health. Well, that's it for this slightly rantier than normal video. I'm going to leave lots of links to various organisations that deal with this sort of thing in the description. I'll leave a link up here somewhere to the Pedal on Parliament video. That's definitely worth watch. And don't forget to check out my blog. I write lots about this sort of thing as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.